You are now listening to theGrio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Writing Black. I'm your host, Maiysha Kai, theGrio's lifestyle editor. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. You can catch up with all episodes of Writing Black and all the other suite of podcasts in theGrio's library on the Grio Black Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. But today, we are talking about writing with somebody who I'm really excited to talk to. You know, a lot of you know in my former pre-lifestyle editor life, I was a singer-songwriter. I occasionally still dabble. And we've got a musician with us today who I've been a fan of since he first dropped. And he's got a new album out, so I'm really excited to talk about it. We have with us Jidenna. How are you? Thank you for joining us on Writing Black.
Yes, thank you, Maiysha. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to be working with theGrio, and especially
we are thrilled to have you.
Yeah, especially something called Writing Black.
That's right.
I started as a poet, so like as a little child, scribbling little poem lines on my composition notebook. So I'm thrilled to talk about writing.
Yeah, and you know, that I love that you're already in that zone. You know, I know you've been heavily promoting the album and it deserves it. It's a great work. It came out in May, and it's fantastic. Be You and God, which the title alone says a lot, and we're going to dig into a lot of that meaning. But I do want to talk about evolution. I want to talk about writing. I want to talk about so many things with you because I've been a fan for such a long time, and it's always cool to see the arc of an artist's career. When you are blessed enough to be able to make a living at your creative craft, everybody doesn't get to do that. You know, there's some really magical things that can happen. And with you especially, I think it's been so fun to kind of watch this, you kind of evolving before our eyes in real time. So, we were introduced to you as a classic man.
I'm a classic man. You can be me when you look this clean. I'm a classic man. Calling on me like a young OG. I'm a classic.
And, with Me, You, and God, there's something different happening here. It feels like it's still manly. It's just a different approach to masculinity. I've heard you use the phrase the divine masculine when talking about this album. Tell me how this album came to be.
Yeah, I love the evolution of artists as well. My favorite artists reinvented themselves like every couple of years. Even to this day, like one of my favorite artists, Tyler, the Creator, if you watch his career from like early 2010s all the way to now, he was able to reinvent himself multiple times. So for me, it's natural for me. I try on different hairstyles every couple of years, different clothing styles. I've done it since I was in high school, probably college. And so this is just the probably the more stripped down version of me. Somebody likened Me, You, and God to like, they were talking about older artists from previous generations. They're like, yeah, this is like your Justin Timberlake Man in the Woods album. This is like your but it's also your Marvin Gaye. I
was going to say, I got more of a Marvin Gaye vibe.
Yeah, I don't think it's the Justin Timberlake comment wasn't like on it. It was more like where he was at the time. He wasn't suit and tie anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So obviously I'm not right now. So Me, You, and God was my departure album. It could be Andre 3000's Love Below, Childish Gambino's Awaken My Love. You see a lot of artists, especially people that started as rappers or like rappy singers, have an album that just felt different than all of them. And this is for sure my offering in that equation. So Me, You, and God started during the pandemic. And for anybody who had a pandemic day, like it did feel like you and the landscape that you were in, whether that was New York or Atlanta or Paris or in my case, Los Angeles, which had a lot of physical, natural landscape. Unlike a lot of other major U.S. cities. So Me, You, and God felt like a title that summed that up, but it also felt like a title that summed up where I was individually, kind of like me, myself, and I, if you will. So it was just a perfect phrase to encapsulate where I was at.
And I feel like you're taking us with you on this album. I love that you talked about Los Angeles really informing where you were. And, we see this with all kinds of writers. We see this with poets. We see this with novelists, this sense of place. And place for you, at least as far as I've been following your career, has always featured pretty heavily in your work, whether, we're talking about, this throwing it back to your heritage in your first album, 85 to Africa, you're really taking us from Atlanta across the Atlantic, this sonically, this album, and I'm delving out of the writing and into that sonic space that I also inhabit as a singer-songwriter. I think a lot of us really felt that very LA vibe. It's there in the instrumentation, it's there in just the vibes, right? You kind of workshopped this, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And I remember one comment stood out to me that it feels like a score. It's very cinematic. That's the word I'm looking for. It's very cinematic.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how place features into your writing.
First, I want to highlight the reason why it feels like a score is because of the maestro, Roman John Arthur, who was the lead producer on this album and produced the majority of the project. There were some amazing other producers, Christian, Gregory, KZ, Don the Bassman, and of course my co-executive producer for all my projects, Nana Kwabena. But that's like the cinematic score. You're getting that from Roman predominantly. So shout out to one of my best friends. The way place influences sound and writing, for me, I completely jump into a new territory every project. Like the first project, I was coming from New York, but I just moved to Atlanta, so I'm experimenting with trap. I moved from my college area, the Bay, to New York. So like the first album has a combination of a bunch of things. And I think it was too early for that because streaming wasn't as high at that time, So for artists like me to, you look at the reviews, eccentric, eclectic, it's like slight.
Oh, I was one of those artists too, where they didn't know what to do with you because they were like,
yeah, and they're like this. It's always like slightly dismissive. I'm like, I'm reading this. I'm like, y'all see it in due time, man. Like y'all see that I'm touching on Afro beats. Y'all see that I'm blending trap with other genres and not keeping it orthodox, like the original Atlanta sound. And sure enough, like literally the year after, everybody started to do more things, and that was album one. Second album, as you touched on, that was my move from Atlanta into Africa, and I was staying in South Africa, but also traveling to different parts, of course, Nigeria. This project, because I was in LA, it was like my favorite time in LA. Like in all time, this is my favorite time was during the pandemic because nobody was out, so there's no traffic. Hollywood is pretty much dead, or quiet and dormant. So you could drive up my favorite highway in the U.S. called the PCH, for those of you who know, Route 1, and it rides along the west side of the entire coast. So I drove up and down that religiously. And I would go to beaches by myself. Once I found this wonderful lady that was the muse for the project and my lovely partner to this day, I would drive with her. So, after that, I would make a song. And that was pretty much my daily regimen. And I lived in a downtown loft. So I was in the city. So I had the landscape, and then I had the city. I was chilling with my LA homies who were playing like LA funk, P-funk, G-funk, and Midwestern funk, like Ohio players. So I was just all the way engrossed in that. And I had no pressure to make a hit song. So that's why Me, You, and God sounds the way it is. It's not trying to be anything it's not. It's probably one of the purest, unadulterated versions of me. And like I have glimpses of it in other projects from songs. You'll hear Bambi, you're like, man, that's really his soul. But this one is a full body of work. It did not have a mission. It did not have an objective other than to be itself. And I think that's why I love it and why I'm so proud of it.
I love that answer. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back with Jidenna and more Writing Black.
I'm Torre. Join us for crazy true stories about stars who I really hung out with, like Snoop, Jay-Z, Prince, Kanye, and the time I got kidnapped by Suge Knight. Don't miss my animated series, Star Stories with Torre, from the theGrio Black Podcast Network.
All right, we are back with our guest today, Jidenna, who is giving us so much. I mean, listen, this is really a rich conversation for me as a writer. Even though I don't currently write songs, I'm still a writer every day. And I love everything that you were just saying about evolution and purity and allowing a space and even just, where life takes us to inform what you're putting out. I mean, we have a lot of writers who listen to this podcast who are interested in craft and how people get from one place to another. And I think, musicians, as we know, the industry itself is incredibly challenging. We're at a really interesting crossroads that we're seeing with, we're having this conversation during the writers' strike. We're having this conversation during the SAG strike. Musicians haven't quite gotten there yet, but there's a lot of rallying cries for that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to me to be speaking to creatives at this time. What do you think, as a writer, as somebody who's worked in many mediums at this point, how do you feel, because your own sound has evolved so much, starting much more rap based to now being probably something that I think most people would say is much more, I can't say it's more musical. It's more vocal in terms of like singing. How do you feel this merging of these landscapes? Like what's next, for us? Obviously we're seeing this encroachment upon craft. What is your response to that?
I was just speaking with a friend who works in documentary films, one of my best friends. And she was talking about the importance of this time for the writer's strike and the SAG strike and, ultimately the crews, the people that put on these enormous productions. And to be 100%, one, obviously I'm in support, but two, I was jealous. Like my first emotion was jealousy because I told her, I was like, look, I'm all the way for it, but I think I'm feeling what other like marginalized groups feel when they see Black people fighting so hard. They be jealous. And we'll never talk about it. The reason I was jealous is because musicians, artists, we don't even have a union. We don't even have step one. So like to organize us is gonna take a huge momentous declaration, and honestly it's gonna take us unionizing in some way, shape, or form. And there's been other artists like Chance the Rapper who've spoken about this like years ago when he first came out. We need to have some sort of union because we are just out here, whether you're broke or you have money. Like I know people who have make multi-million-dollars a year and they don't have the right healthcare coverage because they're trying to afford that lifestyle. So what's next, I think, on the musician and artist front is some sort of centralization. We live in a decentralized industry. So that's number one. And two, my hope is that I see in the TV and film arena that we see maybe a new streaming service or a streaming service that exists that highlights some of the independent work that we see people create, but we don't actually get to see. I know that people are calling for the average person to unsubscribe to these big streaming platforms. I don't believe that most people will, but I understand the call. So at the end of the day, we just have to build structures that are fair and equitable, and I love and support what's going on. But yeah, what's next? I'm thinking about the musicians. Damn, we need to get in the race.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot too, for obvious reasons. On a lighter note, we're also having this conversation during the 50th celebration of hip hop. I mean, we're sitting here, 50th anniversary. Those of us who are of a certain age maybe remember some of a lot of that genesis, a lot of when hip hop really kind of like hit the mainstream, as it were. And you are now part of that legacy. And this is another art form that has evolved so tremendously. Do you see yourself the way that I'm seeing it in terms of like having a part in that legacy, and what would you say that is?
It's such an interesting question, man, because I grew up like hip hop was the thing when I grew up. Like I was benefiting from previous generations' work. I grew up at a time when hip hop was already like the most popular music worldwide. So I didn't even know I didn't know I was privileged to have that. It took me years to understand that, people worked to make a kind of like a folkloric culture, a mainstream culture that could provide income for the artists that were involved. I grew up with like going to Best Buy. Like when I hear some of the OGs talk about like vinyl and digging into crates and like romanticize, like rapping, and like, it's amazing because like I don't have any of that experience. I'm a millennial. You know what we did? We went to Best Buy with our moms. It's like, I want an E-machine or like a Dell computer, Mom, please. I gotta make beats. And then we downloaded Fruity Loops and went on LimeWire and then cut up samples like that. We were doing the same thing. Like the E-machines were dusty, you know what I'm saying? That was our tech, and that's how we flipped it. And we would rap in the house more than the park. And we would record more than we would freestyle. And now you see that people literally do that, like Gen Z, that's what they do. So it's been interesting to watch. And now we're at a time where there's other sounds, like house music is popping again. Afrobeats has taken the world by storm. So hip hop has contenders, and these other genres blend with hip hop. So where I see myself fitting is I was one of the people that would fuse other genres with hip hop. I'm not the only person, of course, but I'm one of the people that came at a pivotal time when streaming was just starting. So between 2015 to like 2020, right at the dawn of the pandemic, that was the evolution of streaming, and I was fusing these genres that you now see are pretty ubiquitous across Earth. So I'm proud to be one of those. I'm proud to be a rebel, and I think that I got that from hip hop. Hip hop was like, don't do what other people are doing. Like Missy Elliott went left when everybody went right. Busta Rhymes went left when everybody went right. And so for me, when I saw everybody with their pants sagging, which I used to do, and still, I do that today sometimes. But like it was out at that time. I'm like, how do I do the opposite? If they're going baggy, I'm gonna go slim. If they sag their pants, I'm gonna wear suspenders. If they dress casual, I'm gonna dress up. And so that was hip hop to me, and all the OGs knew that, and that's why they rated me early, and I appreciate that because they saw I saluted.
I salute it too. I love this. I'm having so much fun in this conversation. We're going to continue it in just a second when we come back with more Jidenna and more Writing Black. Stay tuned.
The 80s gave us unforgettable songs from Bob Marley, De La Soul, and Public Enemy.
I'm a black man, and I can never be a veteran.
Being Black the 80s is a podcast docuseries hosted by me, Touré, looking at the most important issues of the 80s through the songs of the decade. A decade when crack kingpins controlled the streets, but lost their humanity.
You couldn't be like no soft, smiling, happy-go-lucky drug dealer. You had to suppress that.
It was a time when disco was part of gay liberation.
It provided the information to counter narratives that were given to gay people by the straight world.
This is the funkiest history class you'll ever take. Join me, Torre, for Being Black the 80s on the theGrio Black Podcast Network or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We are back with more Writing Black, and our guest today, who I'm a huge fan of, I'm trying not to fangirl out, Jidenna is here with us, giving us so much rich stuff to talk about when it comes to writing, when it comes to influence, when it comes to hip hop and culture. And, you know, one of the things you were just talking about is this fusing of musical styles that, you know, I'm a firm believer in. I love seeing all those elements come together. But it also speaks to a bigger culture that I think you are very much also a part of. Which is this culture of collaboration, which we see obviously in music as a medium much more than we might see in other creative mediums. You know, earlier you were shouting out a whole gang of ridiculously talented producers and collaborators. You are part of the Wonderland Collective, which again, just, you know, I was watching your video. I don't even know if it was the official video, but for Front End off of this album.
You a motherfucking vibe. You at the top of my roster. Hope I'm at the front of your ride. Girl, you know you got me stuck.
And I loved it so much. I loved everything about it. I loved that I couldn't tell who was doing what when. I loved the friendship.
Yeah.
The obvious kinship. The joy.
Yeah.
You know, there was so much of it to love there. Tell me about how like collaboration has functioned in your career. You know, because I think writers, we sometimes think of ourselves as like islands. Like we're just gonna like go in the room and we shut ourselves down and we're, you know.
Yeah.
I'm so cerebral. You know, but, you know, and yes, there's the occasional, you know, book coach or ghostwriter or what have you, or, you know, but you very openly shout out your collaborators. Tell me about how collaboration functions for you as a creator.
Man, you know, that front end video wasn't like a official video. You know, my homie Patrick.
Oh, it should be. It's so good.
Yeah, we probably would have done it up like if that was an official video. Like we would have tried to choreograph it. But Patrick Strives came over to shoot it, my homie, and he was like, "Yo, I don't know if he was coming to shoot that. He just came to shoot, and he was like, "Yo, how do you guys make songs?" And we're like, "All right, just shoot, roll, and we'll show you how we make songs." So we have this idea mic that we hold, which you see me holding, and then we pass it. So we make songs like that. If we co-produce, that's how it looks. We just get on different keys, guitars, bass, somebody, and then we rotate as engineer in the engineer seat because we can all engineer. That's how we make songs. That's how Janelle makes songs. We've been making songs like that for like well over a decade. So it's very much like, I think, funk values. Everybody got different swag. There's hip hop recording styles, which is very immediate. Like Afrobeat's very immediate. Funk is very, like, everybody jumps on an instrument. It's, you know, based on jazz theory in some ways, like just collective improv. Rock is like more intense. So we take the funk aesthetic or funk approach, and that's how we collab. And everybody I'm not opposed to, if somebody got a better bar than I got, then that bar knocks out. I'm not like, oh, I gotta be beholden to my bar. Like, this is my writing. I love collaboration with my homies. I don't do a lot of collaboration outside of Wonderland. Like here and there, you'll see somebody on my projects, but that's where I'm like a shy, introverted writer. Like I freeze up in studio sessions with other artists. That's why I'm like, I still feel like a child in that way. And I'm okay with that because I see other artists that I've admired They when they share how they are, then they feel like that. So, some I'm still rectifying my social anxiety in that space, but I feel very comfortable when I'm at Wonderland.
I really dig that you are being transparent about things like social anxiety. I have that too. And especially when it comes to, as Erykah Badu once famously said, we're sensitive about our shit.
Yeah. Yep.
It's very difficult to kind of put that out there. And for our listeners, I'm going to sidebar for a second. If you want to see what I was referring to, check out Jidenna's Instagram page. It's a great behind the scenes that looks like it's like one shot. It's just a fantastic it's just a wonderful vignette. And yeah, I would be totally happy if that was just the video. Front End is the single. But back to what we were just talking about, to me, this discussion of things like, you were just talking about social anxiety. You referred to having a muse on this project and a partner. Like there is, and that sensitivity that we're talking about, I think is really shining through here in this project. I think, musicians in general, we tend to use our songs to kind of like exercise some whatever we're going through. But there seems to be a very, in every aspect of how you have produced and even promoted this album. Because again, I was talking earlier about, kind of marveling at like the workshopping process you did with this album, where you actively engaged your audience and giving you feedback. And to me, that speaks to something deeper, which is a vulnerability. And I would love to hear your thoughts on vulnerability and how it is functioning for you as you continue to grow as an artist.
Man, I'll say this about vulnerability. It's definitely a buzzword. I hear that a lot right now, and I'm happy about it. It's actually a lot is Black women encouraging Black men to be vulnerable, and I'm hearing that. I'm one of the people that got my ears open to that. So thank you to all the Black women who have pushed us to enter in this new chapter for like Black masculinity. How does vulnerability play a role? Well, I think that I was always, I was raised by engineers. My father was an engineer, my brother, my sister, one of my sisters. And I looked at negative emotions or emotions like sadness or anger as something I had to solve for. Like, oh, you feel this way. So how do you get out of this feeling? How do you solve for it as efficiently as possible? That's how I looked at it. And I think a lot of people do. And to be raised as a man, you actually do that whether or not you're aware of it. How do I solve for this? And then I did a tour 2017 with Stromae. That tour culminated in Madison Square Garden with Stromae headliner and Janelle Monáe and then myself. And after the tour, I'm chilling in a bar celebrating with Stromae's team, and his manager at the time takes me over to the bar. We're all faded, and he's like, I love everything you do. Lonely the Chief is my favorite. The only thing is you know your problem? I was like, my problem, man? We just did Madison Square Garden. Like, I'm popping right now. What are you talking about? Like, it's 2017. I'm in my early prime. And he's like, no, your problem is you're too perfect. You're too perfect. He's like, look at Paulo. That's Stromae's name, Paul. He's like, Paul, he cries when he sings. You, he doesn't. He's like, you have no vulnerability. And it struck me, man. So that like, actually that was 2016. So that winter, I did the writer thing. I told everybody in my artist commune in Atlanta to leave early to go see their families, because I was spending December through January alone in this big rapper mansion that I had. And I kicked everybody out, and I sat and I prayed and I thought and I felt. And I tried to think of a time where I felt really vulnerable. And out of that session came Bambi. And Bambi was my first attempt to be vulnerable, and one of the greatest songs I ever wrote.
To run the jungle, I must be a lion or be a cheetah, but neither is fine. Don't wanna hurt my dear love of my life. Bambi, Bambi.
So this
It's a favorite.
thank you. And so that was my entry point, but it wasn't the whole project. For this project, I had read so much, like bell hooks. I've read so much. This dude Thomas More, who writes Dark Nights of the Soul, Octavia Butler. I've read, I don't know, like 6 books of Octavia Butler. She's one of my favorite authors. Obviously started with Parable of the Sower, Kindred in high school, but then Parable of the Sower, all the trilogies that followed that. And one thing that the lead protagonist says in Parable of the Sower when she's writing her journal called Earthseed is that everything you touch touches you. Everything you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Man, that struck me so hard. And I think that being okay with change, accepting change, is the entryway to vulnerability. And if you can accept that and you can embrace where you are with however you feel, and you can sit in it knowing that it shall pass, but it kind of enjoy it if you can, or at least experience it in full when you're in it. And that's what I did for this project. I was embracing the change. I was embracing the feelings I had of falling in love, which I was afraid to admit. People don't be wanting that. Before, if somebody's like, yo, you in love? Me? Nah, I'm being, man, she cool. She cool. Like, we chilling. We just, you know what I mean? Chilling. Like, why are we so afraid? That's so lame. So that's kind of my story and why I was able to create an album that probably had the sensuality that you heard in the 1970s. Is because I was going through change and I was able to embrace.
You know, it's so interesting. I have made people tear up on this podcast, and you just made me tear up, and I feel some kind of way about it. I guess I'm feeling vulnerable, Jidenna. I'm feeling a little verklempt. Hey. You know, as I was researching for this, I researched all my guests, and one of the things I loved is you did, again, y'all, visit his Instagram page. It's mad fun. You did a whole interview series with Black men, asking them, have you ever been in love? Have you ever been in love?
Have I ever been in love?
Yes, I have.
Yes. Kind of just like I could be myself.
Requires me to be the man that I say I want to be. And that is one of those things.
I love her because it's easy for me to do that. You know, it makes me happy. I see her as somebody I still respect outside of being with her.
I don't even know how to explain it. It was just so wholesome is a word that came to mind. It was so, it was delicious, actually. It was delicious. Like, all these men, you know, I don't even know if you expected some of those words to come out of some of those faces where you were like, oh, you know, on the unexpected tip, you know, it's so funny. I love when people can anticipate my needs. I typically ask my guests who they read, what they love. You just gave us some amazing shout outs. I mean, you know, bell hooks and Octavia Butler alone are major influences on my own life, my own writing. But since you anticipate my needs, you know, I do, you know, you refer to yourself, you know, as a nerd. I know you know, a lot of people might not know you're like a Stanford grad and, you know, like done all sorts of like comparative studies on race and whatnot, which is, you know, I love that. I love a multidimensional artist. But since you have given us some shout outs on who you love to read, I would love to know, you know, I know it's a little early because you just released an album, but what's on the horizon for Jidenna?
Well, I just made a recent announcement that was pretty major. And I had to, it took a lot of deliberation. So for the listeners who have not heard, I decided to forego my own tour to jump on the road with Janelle Monáe. And so I am on the road with my sister one of my great friends and creative partners. I'm so honored to do that because, it's a special moment for her. Talk about vulnerability. She is in a very free space, free and fun and funky. And
she's in full bloom right now.
She's in full bloom. It's dope because I've known her for years. So I've known the private side. To see her display the private side quite literally, like in public, is beautiful to watch. We've talked about it for years, and it's funny because like for the rollout of this album, I had thought about I was like, man, what if I just like roll around naked in the nature with my girlfriend and like film that? That was one of the concepts that we had, and get like a drone shot and zoom in, and we didn't end up doing it. But then I saw Janelle's rollout. I was like, yep, we on the same way. Pleasure, sensuality, feeling free wherever we at. So Janelle,
it's gonna be a naked tour.
Yeah, right. That'd be so funny. It's just the headliner, me, the opening act, none of Kwabana's DJing. We was all just butt ass naked. We would be like, yo, these motherfuckers crazy in Wonderland. I don't know what kind of shrooms they on. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that. After tour, I have another project that I'll be rolling out. I left people for a few years without music, so it's my obligation to serve the people that help lift me up. But more importantly, it's just an obligation to myself to be consistent and to not be a perfectionist. And the second project is definitely, it's a whole different me. It's actually where I feel like I am now, even though I'm in the middle of rolling out Me, You, and God. It's way more Afro fusion house dance music, and it's trancey. So you talked about my major a little bit at Stanford. The full major, the department I was in was a race and ethnicity department, but my major is a major that I created called ritual art. It's studying the art of rituals in different cultures around the world. And that I have utilized that in my marketing, but this next project is going to be steeped in my spiritual side. And that's the side that I have not put on full display because it's very private to me, but I'm going to put it out there. And yeah, it's probably going to turn a lot of heads, and it's going to challenge notions of religion and especially in relationship to where Black people are and where we want to go. I have some perspectives there that I want to share. So that's what's next. Outside of that, once the strikes are over, I'm going to really delve into my acting career because it's something that I've wanted to train in for a minute.
Fantastic. You hear that, y'all? The evolution continues. I, for one, am looking forward to this tour, but I'm also, I'm looking forward to this project, this tour. This conversation was so fun for me.
Yeah.
And so inspiring as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Writing Black.
I appreciate you.
Y'all go out, check out Me, You, and God. And really, I love the way these albums, that they play with each other, So I found myself delving back into your entire catalog. I think a lot of your fans, old and new, will do the same. So thank you again for joining theGrio today.
Thank you, Maiysha. I really appreciate you. Thank you for just having a conversation, and just
my pleasure.
And knowing what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, so many people, they don't do that. They don't take the craft seriously. And I can tell you do. And I can tell you have real passion and interest in what you do. So thank you for that.
And I'm tearing up again. He has this effect on me, y'all. All right. Get me out of here before I start sniffling. I mean, listen, that was an amazing conversation with Jidenna, and I get into it. Get into Me, You, and God. It's a beautiful album. He's obviously in a beautiful phase. I was super inspired by that conversation. I hope you were too. But of course, now it's time for us to get into another favorite thing of mine, which is recommending books. This is the portion we like to call My Favorites, Recommended Reads. We are celebrating the 50th year of hip hop. And, I'm big on ladies first, yo. So this is the Motherlode 100 plus women who made hip hop. This is by Clover Hope. It's got a great graphic quality. There's illustrations here by Rochelle Baker. Here on the cover, you can see Lil' Kim, you've got Nicki Minaj, Missy, Queen Latifah, obviously, our classics here. Clover Hope is fantastic writer. She's been at this for quite a while, and she really did a deep dive here, and there's just some really cool stuff there. Now I'm big on hidden talents. Like we were just talking to Jidenna. Obviously, he's got a lot of talents, a lot of things he wants to explore, and I love it when somebody surprises us. And one surprise I got this year was this trilogy of graphic novels by Chuck D. So this is called Studio. He calls it a Naffic grovel art trilogy of Chuck D. And you really get to see another side to this hip hop pioneer as he kind of takes us through these adventures. I mean, there's 3 volumes here, but this is really, it's published on Enemy Books, as in Public Enemy. And this is really a collector's item. I totally recommend if you're a fan of Chuck D, if you're a fan of hip hop, grab this because what were the odds? Did you see that coming? I didn't see it coming. But those are my recommendations for this week. I hope you will be with us in the future. For more episodes of Writing Black, remember you can catch up on all of the old episodes on the GRIO Black Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, I hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Writing Black. As always, you can find us on the GRIO app or wherever you find your podcasts.
I'm Torre. Join us for crazy true stories about stars who I really hung out with, like Snoop, Jay-Z, Prince, Kanye, and the time I got kidnapped by Suge Knight. Don't miss my animated series Star Stories with Torre from the GRIO Black Podcast Network.